Let me acknowledge my colleagues, my colleague Dr. Janya Mohaule, DG, officials from the department, and members of the media, and again, thank you very much for attending this media briefing. As you'll be aware that it's almost 3 weeks since we started phasing in the reopening of the schools for the year 2021. Our management teams returned on the 25th of January. Our teachers have been at work for 2 weeks since the 1st of February and doing all sorts of necessary preparations to receive our learners tomorrow. We've also amended our school calendar for 2021 as published by the department, confirming that tomorrow, the 15th of February, will be the first day for public schooling in 2021. And from the outset, we want to emphasize that the health and safety of our teachers, of our learners, and our staff remains our top priority. So we've issued consolidated directives, which we gazetted on the 12th of February this year. So in those consolidated directions, we do emphasize the critical importance of vigilance and strict adherence to the health and safety protocols in order to save lives. And these directions have also been distributed to schools for implementation. So the 2021 school readiness monitoring through one-on-one meetings. We've been doing one-on-one meetings with our provincial departments. We've worked with our teacher unions. They have released their National School Readiness Survey, Volume 2 of 2021, which was released jointly by SATU, NAPTOSA, South Africans Onderwyser Unie, NATU, and BEU. They released their report on the 9th of February. And it has also focused on provincial and school readiness in the provinces. And we are using the survey also to plug on identified gaps from our own surveys. But we remain committed in meeting and consulting with our stakeholders, your civil society, your professional bodies, but also different NGOs in the area of education. Our monitoring tool has been focusing on health and safety, on school admissions, on learner dropout, provision of teachers, provision of LTSM, curriculum management and assessment, the rollout of ICTs, communication and technologies, and our work on the school nutrition program, on infrastructure delivery with special focus on water sanitation, but there's now a new focus on schools that have been storm damaged during the rainy season, and also inaccessible roads that we've also had reports on learner transport and safety. So Chair or Elijah will request the DG to give more details on the topics that I've raised so that I don't take too long. We also want to announce that as a sector, we were very privileged to be allocated almost 290,000 young people who have been employed on contract as education assistants and general school assistants. And these young people have been employed in our schools in the sector to respond to the President's fiscal stimulus package, which he announced in April 2020. And as education, we call this initiative the Basic Education Employment Initiative. And it seeks to address COVID-19 related academic disruptions, as well as providing assistance in dealing with lingering systematic challenges. And another key component of this BEEI is to provide support to workers negatively and directly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. We will also go public because I don't think we'll be able to give you more details about the work areas on this subject. But the portion of the 7 billion allocated to this program is targeting also at saving SGB funded posts in public schools and government subsidized independent schools. I think we've been allocated more than 2 billion to assist your government subsidized schools and also the SGB funded posts to make sure that schools that are not receiving the usual allocation because of parents who are unable to pay fees, teachers that don't lose their work. We are working hard to ensure that the delayed payments of some of these young people are addressed immediately. And the impact of coronavirus continues to be felt in the basic education sector. Again, we will be posting the full report, because I'm not sure if we'll be able to go through all the details. So we'll be posting on our website to illustrate what are the impacts of this virus on our work, which is quite saddening in some instances. But the latest available figures indicate that 1,169 educators have passed away as a result of COVID-19. This year alone, up to Friday, the 12th of February, the number of deceased educators stands at 159. Just between, as I say, December and now, in January, we've lost almost 159 educators. And while non-teaching staff that passed also during this period is 69. And this is really heartbreaking as we convey our sincere condolences to the affected families. The other point that we'll be quickly referring to in the DG's presentations about school admissions, I didn't tell you, DG, for some reason, my phone number was on the parliamentary website. And it was not even a switchboard, but a call center. Right through, some will even phone as 527 to say, let's get her before she even starts the day. So it is an area which shows that parents are very desperate in some instances. And again, we'll give the figures. We've requested our provinces also to hold their press briefings to update parents about backlogs on school admissions, because, as I said, those calls showed me that parents are getting restless and desperate when they don't have confirmation for admissions. So we know that provinces have made good progress, but there are still more than 16,117 learners that are still awaiting spaces. And that's why, as I say, parents were even calling, Googling, picking up any number, and making sure that they press that their kids be allocated to schools or the admissions be confirmed. The other area that we want to speak about is around, that as a department, we have a draft revised school admission policy for public comment, and we'd like to invite the public to also send their submissions. It's the policy focuses on the right and obligation of parents, and which is very critical. Hence, we're imploring the public to submit its comments to the department by the 12th of March this year. The other issue also which has been bothering parents about the school fee. And one of the questions frequently asked is around the payment of school fees during COVID-19. I said right, didn't I almost said COVID-19 pandemic. I have to be sure that I read it right. So it is important to clarify this matter, because there are two types of public schools in the country, the fee-paying schools and the no-fee-paying schools. And so fee-paying schools are allowed to charge school fees, as determined by the annual general meeting of the SGB. Therefore, the payment of school fees in such schools is mandatory. There are other phenomena, instances where parents, again, are unable because of the impact of the virus. And we are saying, because this decision is taken by school governing bodies, they should make representations to the school to make sure that the necessary procedures and protocols are followed. So we will also briefly, that's why I don't want to take long, because we'd like to also briefly update you on the 2020 matric examinations, because if you recall, for the first time in history of the national senior examinations in our history, that we had administered a combined exam, but the major issue about the 2020 exams was the question about the leaks. And we'd like to just update the public and yourselves about where we are on the matter. Advocate Luvuyo Bono, who's the chairperson of the National Examinations Irregularities Committee, and Hugh Amo, the chair of the National Investigation Task Team. I wish them to make a brief presentation on how far we are, and then again the DG will lead on that. On stakeholder engagement, as a department, we've been meeting our stakeholders on a regular basis to discuss a variety of matters affecting the sector. The regular meetings have been held with school governing bodies, with principals association, teacher unions, as I said, NGOs, learners, civil society, and different organizations that are involved in education. And the deliberations and inputs received from these engagements have assisted us as the sector to navigate the complex circumstances brought on by COVID-19 pandemic. I think since I got ill from COVID, so I've learned the lesson and to respect it and pronounce it properly. So yeah, I had a severe attack, so so we will strengthen our partnerships with our social partners and other partners in the department. And in conclusion, Chair, I want to thank our social partners, the business community, which has also been very helpful, even under these difficult conditions, by supporting the sector and cooperating with us under very difficult conditions. So these COVID-19 circumstances require the entire nation to support its children and indeed cooperate and support the sector on a sustainable basis. So again, we want to say, let us continue to adhere to the health and safety protocols, wear masks appropriately, sanitize and wash your hands with water and soap, keep social distancing, and avoid large gatherings. And I urge every one of us to play our part in keeping our communities safe and healthy. So Elijah, let me just step off quickly so that I can give a chance to these other two presentations. But thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Minister. We are now going to a presentation by the Director General on the state of readiness. I am going to start the presentation. Please come help us with the sanitizing again. DG, the presentation is ready.
Good afternoon, Program Director, Minister, Deputy Minister, colleagues from the department, the South African public. I'm going to quickly go through just the highlights of the areas of the state of readiness. I must indicate that we collect this data every week. We have one-on-one meetings with individual provinces. We started even before the arrival of the school principals on the 25th of January. We'll continue with that. The 5 teacher unions also commissioned a survey, which is extremely useful. They've given us the second updated survey. I received it yesterday. We've shared it with the entire sector, shared it with Minister, Deputy Minister, MECs, heads of education in all the 9 provinces. It's important because it helps to plug on the gaps that we identify from the information that we're collecting. I'm going to try and spend just a few minutes on this so that I don't take much of your time. I would like us to spend more time in the presentation that's going to follow. The introduction is just to reflect what the WHO is saying about the impact of school closure. It's well known to all of us. It has its own social ills, such as unwanted early pregnancies, learners losing the opportunity to acquire skills and competencies that they need, as well as opportunities for vocational education. But apart from that, services that are provided through schools, such as the National School Nutrition Program. I'll say a little bit about that during the course of this. The next one is just to characterize the year that was 2020, extraordinary year. I want to convey our greatest appreciation and thanks to the leadership in government and in civil society, including our stakeholders who've been our sounding board every step of the way, but also thank the South African public for having demonstrated their confidence in the public schooling system in particular. I must say, meeting with our counterparts from Namibia, Zambia, Rwanda, and other countries, all of them said, we're watching you, following on your footsteps. Remember that whatever you do, we're also looking at some of the things that we can use to navigate this difficult environment. So, reopening of schools, essentially all schools reopened except for a few, as we can see from the presentation, which were really unable to start because of incidents such as inclement weather, storm damage, and so on. But the latest information that we have is that provinces have done their best in terms of making sure that right from the first day of reopening, they work on these schools to make sure that when learners arrive, at least schooling will continue. In instances where schools are not accessible, provinces have been advised, we've been working with them to find alternative facilities so that learners do not stay without, receiving education. We're also looking at, how many principals were able to arrive, how many teachers arrived on the 1st, principals on the 25th of Jan, and we're providing those figures there. We also look at health and safety. What is important here is orientation. The good thing is that we've got some lessons from 2020. We're not coming cold, we're not blank on this environment, so those lessons will come in handy in helping us to start the 2020 academic year. And as we know, school principals started on the 25th, teachers came on the 1st. We've also been finding out what exactly have they been doing from the first day when they arrived in their individual schools. That information is also well documented. The issue of COVID essentials, are they adequate? The other issue is to manage the stock of COVID essentials so that schools do not run out of COVID essentials. I must say that in this difficult fiscal environment, we know that the economy has not been growing. The pandemic just exacerbated the fiscal situation. Money is not readily available to deal with all of these things. We had to actually take money allocated for infrastructure to procure COVID essentials. We're also going to continue with 5 models of timetables that schools are advised to consider. We'll continue with alternating days, alternating weeks. Platooning, although is discouraged by many schools and many districts and provinces, it's one of the 5 models that are available. We're also sharing some details around the information that the minister shared. We've been hard hit by the pandemic, particularly starting from the month of November, culminating to December, right in the middle of the storm of the second wave up to January. We've lost some of our educators and some of our very experienced and competent officials, and they will remain martyrs of the basic education sector as we move forward. So we're sharing the data around fatalities. We can see that the numbers that the minister referred to as indicated there. We're sharing on educators, on learners, which is the smallest, which is 19, lower than even the international benchmark, and the non-teaching staff. School admissions, as the minister said, we really want to applaud provinces. We've drastically reduced the backlog of placements. We can see that I mean, we've admitted for grade 1, 717,433. For grade 8, we've placed or admitted 733,149. You can see that we still have a few that have not been placed. For grade 8 is 16,000. For grade 1, which is drastically low compared to previous years, it's about 8,000, and would be looking for placing all of them in a week or two. Some of the reasons that account to late placement, some of our parents are not getting used to apply a year in advance, but we also understand that in some schools, spaces are in high demand, and it's not possible for all schools to accommodate all the admissions that come at their doorstep. But I must applaud provinces for having reduced this number of learners who are not placed. Dropout rate is another area of concern. So the Back to School campaign, driven by the QLTC, working with our social partners, they are driving that area. Teacher provisioning, all schools have received their school post-establishment, and that is actually finalized around the month of September, October, and we can confirm that all the 9 provinces have afforded all our schools posts that they require. Where there are changes beginning of schooling, schools and provinces and districts know what to do. Teachers with comorbidities, provinces have made arrangements as well, which place a huge financial demand on provinces. But so far, we've been able to battle with this and cope with it. We'll be meeting with teacher unions because the resolution that existed expired when we moved to alert level 1. So we have a circular that regulates the current dispensation as an interim measure. We're looking at meeting at the ELRC to look at whether we will come up with a resolution to take us forward. LTSM, most provinces use the just-on-time principle to deliver because you know that many of our schools are vandalized, and some of these items are items that are taken away when people break into our schools and even take food items and so on. So they've taken just on time, delivering when principals arrived, because learners would arrive on the 15th. So stationery has been delivered. Some textbooks are to be finalized, but many of them have now been delivered. And this is just top up. We're not providing textbooks afresh to every learner. We're just dealing with shortages in the system. The ICT rollout, we came up with a comprehensive ICT rollout plan, particularly driving broadcasting solutions to provide support to learners at school and at home, and this has proven to be working in 2020, so we'll continue with that in 2021. National School Nutrition Program, just to share some data of even learners who've been receiving feeding ever since principals and school management teams arrived on the 25th. We're sharing that data, and of course, more and more learners will benefit from this as they start schooling tomorrow. Infrastructure, we've also referred to storm-damaged schools. We're providing data there of storm-damaged schools and what provinces are doing to deal with storm-damaged schools. And the next one is a provision of mobile classrooms where they are needed in terms of the numbers, and some classrooms which cannot be utilized because they are damaged. Water, in terms of water, the 6 o'clock meetings have started again with the infrastructure line function to make sure that attention is given to sanitation and water, and that has been going on well. Provinces together with DBE are working together to address instances where there's water shortages. The information that we have is that there should be no school without water. There should be some form of either tankering in providing water or working with municipalities to increase water pressure because those are some of the challenges. Learner transport, our provision for learner transport, we provide 80 to 85% of learners who are in need, given the financial resources that are available. And we are giving figures. You can see that the supply and demand, the gap has been narrowed over time. It has been drastically narrowed there. School vandalism, we're giving figures there. 1,724 of our schools got vandalized over the festive season. More often than not, when schools are closed, then the rate of vandalism goes up. Hostel facilities, they've been audited as well, whether they'll be able to comply with physical and social distancing. We're giving you the figures there, those who comply, those who don't comply, alternative measures are being employed. Learners or schools for learners with special education needs, we've also been auditing, provision such as assistive devices, therapeutic services. The long closure of schools impact on these learners profoundly. Many of them don't get to access these services, and that slows their development and their well-being. And we're happy that they are coming back and will be able to get all these services back. And as I've said, we are meeting regularly with Association of School Governing Bodies, professional bodies, which includes professional bodies that represent schools for learners with special education needs. Psychosocial services, which is the last one, program director. It's a major area for us. The demand has been huge for SMT members, for teachers. Then the demand is going to be even higher for learners as learners return, having been traumatized by the fact that they would have lost a loved one, they would have also been infected and so on, they would have lost a teacher. So we're working with NGOs. We've also brought in online services that will come in handy to provide for this. We're also working with faith-based organizations because they are very good in this area. So we're going to keep monitoring this and make sure that the necessary support is provided. Thank you very much for indulging.